Welcome to Lesson 2 in Module 3, Leveraging the Facebook Toolset. Today we're going to be talking all about audience targeting. I put a huge emphasis in Module 1 of this course on how to define who your avatar client is. Today we're going to learn how you can find those people and get your messages to them on Facebook. So let's just give a preview of what we're going to learn in this lesson. First of all, we're going to look at creating an audience. We're going to learn about the different types of data that you can target and where that data comes from, which is very, very important. We're also going to learn how to create these audiences inside of both Ads Manager and in Power Editor, and I'll be giving you a live demo of that. Next, we're going to be talking about researching potential audiences with the tool Facebook calls the Audience Insights. It's very important to know exactly who these people are that we're marketing to, and we can get so much rich data out of this tool. I'm going to show you how to do that. Audience Insights gives you a lot of powerful information. You can look at the number of people inside of a potential audience. You can really drill down and see what their demographic information looks like, what pages these people like, and their Facebook activity. So I like to start my research process inside of Audience Insights, and once I've got an idea of who these people are, then I'll actually build the audience inside of either Ads Manager or more likely in Power Editor. Finally, I'm going to share with you some recommended strategies and take you A through Z through the way that I actually prepare my audiences with Facebook. Now, a very important question to ask right off the bat is, what data can we use for targeting? Well, there's a lot of different things. Facebook breaks it down into a few different categories. The two main categories are demographics and interests. There are two additional categories called behaviors and connections. We'll go through each of these briefly here. Now, demographics comes directly from Facebook's user-submitted data. When you create a profile, you have to put in things like where did you go to college, where do you live, when is your birthday. Even after you've created a Facebook profile, you can put in that you've moved or that you're visiting a certain location. Facebook knows all of this information about you, and that's inside of the demographics portion. The other portion is interests. Now, interests come from a variety of different sources. Some of it does come from your behavior on the Facebook app, and some of it comes from third-party resources. Facebook has created some key alliances with companies like Epsilon and Axiom. These are giant data aggregators. They know so much information about you. And what they're able to do is they're able to upload all of the information that they know about the consumers in their database and then match that to known Facebook profiles, essentially giving Facebook infinite ability to target people. This is one of the things that makes Facebook ads so powerful because they have almost unlimited data on their users, which for us as advertisers trying to reach a very specific niche audience is fantastic. By and large, I would recommend that you rely on demographics and you research your interests. And the reason I say this comes back to the certainty of the data. The certainty of the data in the demographics portion is almost 100% reliable. The information inside of the interest is not as reliable. We'll get into that a little bit further on, but I would definitely rank demographics as a more accurate way of targeting people than purely by interest. In fact, I would never target strictly based on interest. I would always layer on demographics on top of it. Now, behaviors is a third category that Facebook gives you for targeting. Behaviors has a lot to do with purchasing and what somebody's behavior is like, especially with things like spending habits. How many lines of credit does this person have? Do they have retail-specific credit cards? Are they frequent spenders at luxury retailers? A lot of this information doesn't come directly from Facebook, but because it is paired from some of these third-party data companies, it can be powerful, especially if you're in the e-commerce world. Finally, connections are only available for people who are connected to your pages. You can learn a lot about the people who follow your page inside of Audience Insights by looking into connections. And even inside of Ads Manager, you can select people based on their connection to your page. You can even exclude people who are connected to your page. So if you're giving an introductory offer and you don't want to piss people off by giving them a better deal than what they have gotten, you can also do that with connections. The best strategy is to use Audience Insights to learn about people within an interest group and then layer demographic detailed targeting on top of that. And this is something we'll spend a lot of time doing when I actually give you a live demo here coming up. Now let's talk about Facebook interests. Facebook interests allows you to target nearly anything you could possibly imagine. Another thing that's very powerful is that Facebook interests almost give you the ability to steal your competitor's audience. If there's a thought leader in your space who has a very large following, they'll actually appear sometimes as an interest. The two examples we're going to look at coming up are two famous authors, one Dave Ramsey and the second Susie Orman. These people are both in the financial services space. They have a large following both online and offline. They have such a large following, we're actually able to target them as an interest. And we can learn a lot about the audiences of our competitors by doing this. Now, there are some important things to know about interests. First of all, it's the fact that they aren't 100% accurate. It can be eerily accurate. And I'm going to show you how you can actually look at what Facebook knows about you. You'll look at some of the things inside of there and be like, oh my goodness, it's crazy how much they know about me. On the other hand, information inside of the interest can be old and outdated, and thirdly, it could be totally outright wrong. You can get an idea of how accurate this is by looking at it for yourself inside of your ad's preferences, and I'll show you that coming up here in a bit. So let's just kind of give an idea of where we're going, and then I'm going to get off this screen and go to actually a live demo inside of my browser. We're going to focus more on targeting features, and I'll give you a valuable resource that you can use for that. We're also going to be learning about interests from our own ad preferences. I'm going to give you a live demo, and we're going to cover researching interests inside of Audience Insights. We're also going to be able to compare potential interests inside of Audience Insights as well. Let's just say there's two thought leaders like I mentioned a moment ago. We want to see which one has a better match with the target audience that we're after. We can compare these side by side and see which one might be more appropriate for us to target. We're actually going to go through the process of building an audience, and we're going to both do this inside of Ads Manager and inside of Power Editor. I hope you're just as excited as I am. Let's go ahead and dive right in. The first thing I want to show you is this awesome infographic from WordStream. What they've done is put every single targeting feature that Facebook currently offers inside of one epic infographic. The thing I really like about this is it clearly defines the difference between demographics and interests. When you're inside of the actual ad builder, whether it's Power Editor or Ads Manager, it can be a little bit hard to discern which is which. Inside of this infographic, it makes it a little bit more clear. There's no way we could possibly cover all of the different things inside of this infographic, but we'll look at some of them here together. First of all, you've got your basic stuff. You've got location, age, gender, languages, relationships, and education. This is stuff that almost every single Facebook user has submitted about themselves in their profile. Down below that, you start to get into things like financial, home ownership, industries, what type of job this person might have. You can even get so specific to see what type of office this person works in. Do they work in a home office, a small business, or in a small office? Inside of home ownership, you could select homeowners. You could also select a specific type of home ownership like condos, apartments, or a single family home. You've got ethnicity, generations, and politics. Finally, one of the really interesting things inside of demographics that I think is a goldmine for a lot of advertisers is these life events. You can see somebody who has an anniversary within the next 30 days, somebody who's away from their family, someone who's away from their hometown, in a long distance relationship, had a new job, has a new relationship, was recently engaged, was recently married, someone who recently moved, someone with an upcoming birthday. You can even target people who are friends with other people that have recently had these life events. A friend of somebody who recently moved, or a friend of somebody who recently got a new job. If you were in the e-commerce space and you were selling something birthday related, targeting somebody with an upcoming birthday would be a fantastic targeting option. Let's say you sold a product that wasn't available until somebody turned a specific age. Maybe you're in retirement planning, and when somebody turns age 65, that's a life event. It's typically the retirement age. You could target somebody specifically by an upcoming birthday for a specific age. Now, further on down inside of this infographic, we start to get into these interests. Now, again, interests vary so widely. I don't know that WordStream even has all of the interests that are available inside of here. You will see some of the same things. You'll see higher education in here and a little bit of some additional information about job and that sort of things. But again, separate this in your mind, the difference between interest and demographic. Interest could simply be based off of activity on the Facebook platform, whereas demographics, this is more verified information. Now, this ranges widely from advertising, agriculture, banking, higher education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, real estate, all the way down through entertainment, family relationships, what sort of food and drinks these people like, their hobbies and activities, even their shopping and fashion. So there are a lot of different things that you can target inside of interest, and we'll dive deep into this inside of the Audience Insights. Now, the third data category that we covered in our preview is behaviors. In addition to the data aggregators, Facebook also partners with a lot of online web traffic data miners. This gives Facebook the ability to target people who are in the buying pattern for a specific activity. Automotive, for instance, is the first one that shows up. Someone who recently purchased a vehicle. You can also target people based off of their digital activities or their financial transactions and their spending methods. You can find people with specific job roles and different types of job hierarchies like management, executives, owners, and that sort of thing. You can even target people who have a specific mobile device if you only wanted to target Android users or people with Samsung Galaxy S4s or wherever it is. And these recent behaviors inside of here can be very, very powerful. I believe that life changes are oftentimes things that spawn other behaviors. An obvious application of this is somebody who recently bought a new smartphone might be in the market for a new smartphone case. So if you looked at somebody who recently bought a Samsung phone and you sell that specific case, serving that ad to that person right after they make that purchase is perfectly timed. You can also look at travel behaviors, residential profiles, seasonal events, and one thing that can be very powerful if you're in the mortgage or in the real estate business is you can look at people based off of their residential profiles. You can look at how long they've been at their home, whether they're likely to move, if they recently moved in already, or if they recently took out a new mortgage. There are a lot of things in life that change once somebody makes some sort of home move. If you've ever done that before and your entire mailbox is full of coupons from nearby stores, you know that other advertisers realize that this is powerful. Finally, inside of connections, you can look at people based on how they're connected to your page. People who are connected to your page, people who are not connected to your page. You can exclude people who are connected, and of course, look for friends of people who are connected to your page as well. Finally, remarketing inside this infographic, we're going to cover inside of our custom audiences and our pixel later inside this module. So I won't belabor this point too much. What I really want to give you an idea of is how broad the scope of different targeting methods we have inside of the Facebook toolset. I'd recommend downloading this, clicking the link below this lesson, and looking at this infographic in more detail. Your eye is naturally going to gravitate to the ones that are most applicable to your business, and that exploration process is very, very valuable. Now, in the introduction to this lesson, I made a pretty clear distinction between the difference between demographics and interests. What I want to show you is the actual ad preferences that Facebook knows about me and the different interests that I have. You may not know this, but if you just go to facebook.com/ad/preferences, if you're logged into your Facebook account, it will actually show you what Facebook thinks it knows about you. And it'll break it down by several different categories. This first category is business and industry. Now looking through here, Unbounce is a tool I use all the time. Russell Brunson is a guy who created ClickFunnels that I'm a subscriber to. ESPN Fantasy Sports, I'm addicted to. I've got it on my phone every single second of every day. Facebook Power Editor is something that I use on a daily basis, as is entrepreneurship and conversion marketing. I'm a big fan of GoPro. So you can see that Facebook has an idea of the type of things that I'm interested in based on what they've got inside this business and industries tab. However, you can click on that See More and start scrolling down here and see other things that Facebook thinks it knows about you. Now, several years ago, I went to school to get a new degree, and at that time, I was probably really interested in higher education. At this point, I'm not. So this particular interest isn't really applicable to me, and you can actually teach Facebook that that's not applicable to you by clicking off of it. Some of the things that will appear inside of your interest will kind of make you scratch your head. Cash flow. I don't even know where that comes from, exactly what that's referencing, but that's something that's probably not super applicable to me. However, this 3CX phone system is the phone system that I recently purchased for my office. Whoever's running the advertising at 3CX Phone Systems is doing a great job, because after going to their website, they remarketed me on Facebook, and I got an ad inside my Facebook newsfeed, and it says you have this preference because you clicked on an ad related to 3CX Phone Systems. This is very, very pertinent. It indicates a behavior that I very, very recently made. So you can kind of see the polar extremes of interest inside of this one tab. You can see things that are hyper pertinent to me, and on the other hand, you can see things that are older interests of mine that aren't super applicable. You can go through several different categories and look at news and entertainment. John Loomer is a Facebook advertising guy I really appreciate. Canva is a tool I use all the time. Snowboarding Magazine and Practical Jokers is a show that I really like. They've done a good job in most instances of targeting me, but at the same time, I know that if I click down here, I'm going to start to see some things that I'm either not interested in at all or haven't been interested in for a very long time. Here's a good example of it. Here's a movie called Ready. I don't even think I've ever seen this movie. I don't even know what it's about, but it says I have this preference because you liked a page related to Ready. I don't even know what that is, but just take this with a grain of salt. Understand the interests can be powerful, but they also can be inaccurate. One of the things people get really excited about when we start talking about audiences is the ability to target specific people's followers. I'm going to show you two examples of this, and we're going to really dive deep into both of these people inside of Audience Insights. First of all is Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a nationwide phenomenon. He's written books. He has a radio show. I think a lot of people would consider him the preeminent resource for personal financial management. And you can see that they have a huge following. He has over 3.5 million people who like his Facebook page, and even more people who have interacted with his Facebook page. Another person who fits into a similar category is Susie Orman. Susie Orman has also written books. She appears on TV. Susie can be a little bit contrarian, but there are also people who really, really love her. She also has a sizable following of about 500,000 people on Facebook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug both of these people into Audience Insights and show you what we can learn about the people that follow their page or who have interacted with them. First of all, we'll look at Dave Ramsey here. Now this is Audience Insights. If you haven't used it before, you should familiarize yourself with this. If you're inside of your ads manager, you can click on this little hamburger icon. Audience Insights will either appear right here in this short menu, and if it doesn't, you can click on All Tools and it'll appear down below. Now, all I've done to this point is that I've keyed in Dave Ramsey into this interest category right here. I've done the same thing in another tab for Susie Orman. But what I want to do is show you how you can use Audience Insights to learn about these people's followers. First of all, let's look at Susie Orman. Right off the bat, one thing that stands out to me is under this age and gender category, you see that 94% of her followers are women, whereas only 6% of them are men. Now, for whatever reason, if I'm targeting Susie Orman's fans on Facebook advertising, maybe I'm a financial advisor, or maybe I just feel like she's got some sort of affiliation that resonates with my audience, I know right off the bat she has a primarily female audience. On the other hand, if you look at Dave Ramsey's page, you're going to see a more even split. He's got 32% of his followers are men, whereas 68% of them are women. You'll also notice a little bit of difference in the age of these people. You can see that Dave Ramsey has a lot of people anywhere from ages 25 up to age 54, whereas when you get over to Susie Orman, she has many fewer followers inside that 45 to 54 age range. The next tab that I want to focus on is the page likes. It's going to categorize the pages at the very top, but if you scroll down, you'll see actual page likes that a lot of her followers actually follow as well. Now, just right off the top, I see a lot of female-oriented brands like Michael Kors, Hairfinity, Marshalls, The Best Man. Some of these I don't even recognize, and I assume that they're audiences that are primarily women-based audiences. When you look over into Dave Ramsey's page likes, you'll see a totally different group of people. You see Rachel Cruz, you see Proverbs 31 Ministries, you see Joel Osteen Ministries. Right off the bat, I understand this is a more conservative and religious-based following. Now, this is a really good tool that you need to use inside of your ads. Let's just say that we run ads to a targeted group of Dave Ramsey followers, but at a certain point, our ad performance starts to decline, or we just want to diversify, or we want to scale our ads and reach people that aren't necessarily inside of his network. Well, you can start to see trends inside of here and other pages that might be worth targeting. Audience Insights shows you the size of these different audiences, and there are several on here that are plenty big enough to build a following based on. You can see these for Susie Orman as well, but of course her page likes are much different. But here, Michael Kors, there are 170,000 people who follow Susie Orman who are also interested in this other company. So Michael Kors may be an interest that you would want to do some more digging into. In addition to page likes, there are other tabs you can look at. You can look at location, but more importantly, let's look at their activity. This first chart shows us the frequency of different Facebook-related activities. What this is telling us is that the average person who follows her page in the last 30 days has commented on 36 posts, has liked 51 other posts, has shared 10 posts, and has clicked on 48 ads. Ads clicked is the second highest Facebook behavior inside of this entire frequency of activities chart. That means that her audience is very responsive to advertising. You can see the same thing inside of Dave Ramsey if we go to his followers activity. You'll see slightly different numbers, but again, we see 50 ads clicked on average in the last 30 days. Again, this is a hyper-responsive audience. Another important thing to know is how are these people interacting on Facebook, and they actually show you devices by user in a chart below. And one thing that you would have to know if you were advertising to this audience is that 57% of the traffic for these users is mobile only, whereas only 43% of them are mobile and desktop, and less than 1% is desktop only. What this means is if you're advertising to this audience, you have to put a lot of care into the mobile ads that you show and also the way your pages are optimized for mobile as well. You can even go so far as to see the actual type of devices these people use. 24% are Android, 23% are iPhones or iPods. There are two other tabs that can be very valuable to you. Next, you can click on Household. This is going to show you the average income in thousands of dollars for the people inside of this audience. You can see that the large majority fall in this $50,000 to $75,000 range. You have another peak right here at between $125,000 and $150,000. Now let's see how Susie's audience compares. You'll see again a large group of people in that $50,000 to $75,000 range and another spike between $125,000 and $150,000. You'll see a slight difference on the far left-hand side of the scale. For Susie's audience, she has 16% in this lowest category and 14% in the next lowest category, whereas Dave Ramsey has only 13% of people in each of those categories respectively. So what you could draw from this is that he might have a slightly more affluent following than does Susie Orman. You can also learn a lot about this audience by looking at household size. There are a lot of people with additional people inside of their homes for the Dave Ramsey following, whereas with Susie Orman, you'll see fewer people with 3 or more people inside of that same household. Finally, scroll down to spending habits and you can see what type of cards and different financial instruments people use to make transactions. The last thing to look at here is actual purchases. Susie has a good group of her user base who make a high volume of online purchases, and you can see an overview of the categories that have the most purchases in them. Conversely, inside of the other audience for Dave Ramsey here, we'll see that he has a lot of medium purchasers, still a healthy number in these higher purchase categories, and then again, you can start to see the various categories of purchases that people make. Now, just looking down through here, you've got household products, kids products, business purchases, food and drink. What I'm spotting as a trend between these two audiences is that the Dave Ramsey audience is a lot more conservative. It's generally a bigger family type of household. These people are a little bit more conservative. They have a little bit more money. Most of their purchases are affiliated around family-based goods. And that just gives us some insight, a little bit of understanding of who these people really are. Now, because Dave Ramsey's following is so much bigger than Susie's, I want to show you inside of this audience insights how we can get a little bit more information even still from Dave Ramsey's followers. Now, off to the left-hand side, you'll see a lot of these categories that we looked at earlier on. Of course, you can see the behaviors, but you can also start to filter on things like income. So let's just say we only want to see how many people Dave Ramsey has as followers or people who are interested with him that make at least $100,000 or more. If we scroll up, we see that number went down substantially from 3.5 to 4 million down to 700 to 800,000 monthly active people. Still a very big group of highly affluent people. Let's get a little bit more granular with this. Let's say we only want to look at homeowners of single-family homes that are worth at least $200,000 or more. Now, as we scroll up to the top, we'll see that our audience dropped all the way down to 250 to 300,000 monthly active people. And again, now that we've narrowed this down, we're going to start to see some new information in these other tabs, like inside of page likes. We're going to start to see some things that didn't show up the first time. Here's Joanna Gaines with 22,000 people in her audience. That didn't show up the first time. So we know that the people who like Dave Ramsey and also like Joanna Gaines are more likely to own a home and might have a higher income than people who don't. In the other categories, we'll also see differences. Of course, their purchases. There's a big difference in purchases here. Strangely enough, there's a higher volume of people with low online purchase behavior, even though we filtered for people with higher than average income. Another thing that's interesting to look at is what the demographics look like. You see that this age scale has tilted much further down the scale. You also see an even higher disparity of women versus men as we saw without those additional filters added on. Audience Insights is by no means 100% bulletproof, but it is a really good way for you to understand what commonalities people inside of a particular interest group will have. You could do this for motorcycles, you could do this for people who fly airplanes, you could do this for any interest category you could possibly imagine. But I really encourage you to dive deep into Audience Insights before you actually create that audience, because you're going to learn a lot about these people that you wouldn't have known earlier on. For instance, you might not have known that over 90% of Susie Orman's followers are strictly women. So when you're writing ads and copy for a almost 100% woman audience, you're going to want to make sure you keep that in mind. Select things that are going to appeal to that particular buyer. Now you can get really crazy with this and start only filtering by women, going back to page likes and see which page likes only apply to Dave Ramsey's followers who are affluent and only women. We start to see some additional other categories come up in here. I'm not going to spend much more time inside of Audience Insights, but what I really want you to understand is the basic understanding of how to use the tools and how to do some critical analysis as you dive into these different interest groups. The next thing I want to show you is how to build these audience once you've selected them inside of Ads Manager. Now here's a blank canvas. This might look a lot like your Facebook account right now. Go ahead and create an ad. Of course, choose an objective. For this example, we'll just use website clicks. And what's going to happen is it'll actually build up the ad builder. You can see on the left-hand side, we're inside of the ad set level and we're inside of the audience sections. As you scroll down, you'll see that starts to change to budgeting, scheduling, and placements. We're going to live right up here just for this lesson. Now I'm going to make up an arbitrary audience here. We're going to say we want to target people who are between the ages of 30 and 55. You can select your range here. We want to target only English speaking people. You can select from a few different options. I always select the US one. And of course, it's automatically selected United States as our location. It's really important to know what you're targeting inside of location because there are different options. By default, you get everybody in this location, but all those people might not necessarily live here. So if it made sense for you to target people who lived permanently in your location, you would want to select the second option, which says people who live in your location. You can also target people who are recently in this location and who have left. Maybe you could send an ad that says, hey, come back to Colorado for vacation. It's beautiful here in the wintertime. Or you can also select people traveling in this location. This shows us only people who are more than 125 miles away from their homes. So make sure that you select the location you want. For this one, we're going to choose people who live in this location. Now, as I make updates to this, you'll see this little meter over here and this potential reach bar change. If we broaden the targeting, that number will go up, and as we narrow the targeting, that number will go down. So let's scroll down here into the detailed targeting portion. The first thing I'm going to do is take the example that we just did. I'm going to type in Dave Ramsey here, and we'll select him. So that number went from 89 million all the way down to 2.5 million. Now, one interesting thing to note about that is that we saw he had about 3.5 to 400,000 people inside of Audience Insights. The only difference here is that we have targeted by United States and we have a specific age group. We've already cut that audience drastically just with those two additional filters. Now, you can add additional filtering in one of two different ways. If I click here and browse and start clicking through these different demographics and interests right here, we're going to be growing our audience size. However, if you want to narrow the audience, you'll have to select down here. This is basically the difference between and versus or. If you select it inside of that same little window up above, you're saying like Dave Ramsey or match whatever other criteria you select. If you narrow the audience, you're basically getting more granular. You're going to weed out more and more people, and you'll see this 2.5 million number get lower as we continue to do this. So let's go ahead and browse these different categories. I'm going to go into demographics. I'm going to go down to financial and income. And as you can see, it's a little bit hard to navigate inside of here. I'm doing this in Ads Manager because it's one of the more common tools that people use, but it's a little bit easier to do this inside of Power Editor, which we'll get to here in a little bit. So let's say we want to select everybody with $100,000 of income or more. So now I've got people who are interested in Dave Ramsey and who make over $100,000 inside of the United States. You'll see that this number of people is now 560,000. We're starting to get more granular on the person we're wanting to target. Now this is a fictitious example, so there's not a specific buyer profile that we're going after, so I'm just going to call this good and I'm going to save it right now. And you can save this audience, and then anytime in the future you want to reuse it, all you have to do is pull it down from the saved menu. Now the next time you come into Ads Manager, if you wanted to use a saved audience, you can select the one that we just created, Test Dave Ramsey. You can even go in here and edit it. So if you have a baseline that you always want to use for your targeting and then layer on top of it, save the more generic, wider version of it, and then come back in here and edit it. And of course, you can make that a little bit more specific. And we've got an entire lesson ahead of us dedicated to some of these other things that you'll see inside of Ads Manager, but I do want to explain this estimated daily reach to you briefly. Even though there are 560,000 people in our audience, it's telling us that our estimated daily reach is between 1,800 and 4,800 people. Why is that number so much smaller? Well, the reason is that Facebook has automatically signed a budget to this campaign. And because our budget isn't giant, we're not going to be able to reach all 560,000 people in one day. So if you scroll down here below, you'll see that they've already assigned a value of $20 to this campaign. Let's just say, for instance, we want to spend $1,000 per day. You'll see this estimated daily reach go up to this range of 16,000 to 42,000 people. There's another thing inside of here that's also impacting the potential reach, and we can see that when we go up to placements. Facebook has automatically selected automatic placements, but let's just say we only want to run this to mobile users because in our audience insights we saw that the majority of his audience is mobile. It's automatically going to display these on Instagram, which I'm going to deselect, and Audience Network, which I will deselect as well. Now, it didn't make a huge difference to his number. We see it's still at 560,000. Now, if we put this to desktop only, we'll see that number go down drastically. It got cut by more than half, 280,000 people. And again, referencing what we learned about our audience inside of Audience Insights, this should be no surprise to us. Almost 100% of people in his audience use mobile devices, and only about a third of them use desktop along with their mobile devices. So you can see that by limiting it to desktop only, we've cut the audience in half. The people who only use mobile devices are not included this any longer. So we've got our head around how to create an audience inside of Audience Insights and do a little bit of digging into that. We've also built an audience inside of Ads Manager. Now let's go into Power Editor and see what this looks like over here. Now I've got an existing ad set here. I'm going to go ahead and click edit it, and we'll see the same options that we saw on the other screen. The audience details appeared down below. Now I have a saved audience that's already pre-populated in here. Of course, I can click edit, and we're going to get back to a screen that's very similar to the one we just looked at. It's a little bit easier to navigate inside of Power Editor. And again, remember that when new features are rolled out to Facebook advertising, they appear in Power Editor first. So you can stay ahead of the curve and get additional targeting options by using it here. I also like it because it's a lot easier to build ads inside of here. We're going to conclude this lesson by looking at the strategy that I call the leverage strategy for building Facebook audiences. Now, if you feel like this is a lot to take in, take a deep breath and just calm yourself down for a moment. There is a lot of data that's available to us inside of Facebook. You're going to learn so much by simply exploring the tools. I'd recommend two things after this lesson is over. First of all, look at the WordStream infographic and start to get ideas in your head rolling about the different types of audiences that you want to target. The next thing is to open up your Ads Manager or Power Editor and start fooling around with this. You're not going to spend any money until you click that green purchase button. So go ahead and play around with these tools, build audiences, learn from them, add to your audience, subtract from your audience, add connection types, do anything you want, and just learn a little bit more about how this applies specifically to your business. So when you're going through your process, this is the process that I would recommend. First of all, start by researching interests inside of the audience insights. I learned so much just preparing for this lesson about the two different thought leaders inside of MySpace that we compared side by side. Even though both of those individuals were influencers in the same field of personal finance, we saw massive differences who their audiences really were. We saw one that was conservative and religious, and we saw another one that was almost 100% female and progressive. So start by researching your interests inside of Audience Insights. The next thing you want to do is once you've established a baseline, start layering in demographics, behaviors, and connections. You saw that we did a very basic example with just strictly income. You can add additional interest to that. You could put in behaviors, people who have recently bought a car that follow Dave Ramsey. There are so many different things that you can do. So once you've got a little bit of insight into who these people are, now start layering on those demographic filters. The third thing you want to do is to jump into Ads Manager and Power Editor to build your audience. Keep in mind that Audience Insights gives us a broad picture of who's inside of that existing audience. Once you get inside of Ads Manager, you'll have even more filtering options to get super granular on your targeting. The fourth thing you'll want to do is actually test ads to your audience like you would any other variable: images, copy, and offer. We talked about how much of a major difference one image versus another can make inside of an ad. There may be an even bigger difference in the response rate based off the audience that you target. Inside of our testing and scaling, and also inside of our campaign structure lessons, we'll learn more about the testing process. But always keep in mind that we should test our audiences just like we would any other campaign element, like our images, our copy, and our offer. Finally, review your audience insights based on campaign activity. Once you begin testing and running ads, a different version of Audience Insights will be available inside of Ads Manager. What this represents is the people only who have interacted with your advertisement. You'll see all of the same categories inside of Audience Insights inside of Ads Manager at that point, and you'll be able to see who you're really appealing to with your advertisements. Let's just say, for instance, that we were targeting Susie Orman's audience, which is over 90% women, and we looked inside of Audience Insights. We would expect to see 90% women who have actually taken action with our advertisements. If for whatever reason we saw a disproportionate number of men who responded to the ad, we could probably learn a thing or two about what we did inside of that ad to make it appeal to somebody who's really a minority inside of this larger group of people. We'll cover more about Audience Insights inside of Ads Manager when we get into the scaling and testing lesson. Spending the time to create a fantastic audience is well worth your time. I hope you've understood a little bit more about the realm of what's possible within audience targeting, how the tools work, and a path that you can follow going forward so that you can really make this work for your business.